this point, I'm very, very pleased to welcome again our three speakers, Anna, Alyssa, and Jane. The reason we're here today is to have the conversation about new roles in newsrooms, how they are changing, and how technology and AI specifically has a big part in creating new pathways to newsrooms. Anna as lead data scientist at The Guardian, and Alyssa as super long title with R&D chief and responsible for new product and newsroom tools as well, at the Wall Street Journal, will tell us about their experience. For both of them, we actually already published an interview about their career and how they got here on our website, which we will also share the link for everybody to read. And I will let them introduce themselves very soon. But first is my absolute pleasure to introduce Jane Barrett as the moderator of the conversation. Jane is a friend, I can say. Jane is also a global lead for media news strategy, if I'm saying that well, at Reuters, based here in London. And I asked personally Jane to moderate this conversation about new roles because she has been for years a champion about new roles in newsrooms and also paving the way for many other people with their own experience and with their own roles. So I couldn't be more excited to let her lead this conversation. So Jane, thanks so much for doing this. And at this point, the floor is yours. I will let you let Alyssa and Anna introduce themselves even further, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the conversation. Thank you for being with us.
Great, thank you so much, Mattia. It's a very kind and generous introduction for us all. Yeah, Mattia said paving the way for people. I think also taking the pain for people who come behind us. And I think Anna and Alyssa will share that sentiment. Often when you're getting into new territories, it's very, very exciting. It's also utterly exhausting. And there are lots of battle scars, which only make you stronger, I'm sure. So I'm delighted to be hosting this session today with Anna and Alyssa. And what we really want to do over the course of the next hour is to give you a good sense of how Anna and Alyssa have built their careers, what the path is that they have taken, and really how they are forging new ways to use technology in journalism, and particularly looking at AI, of course, as that is the topic of the day. I would encourage you, please, to get involved in the conversation. We'll leave Q&A time at the end, but it's always really nice to feel that you're being heard and that other people are engaged in the conversation. So as we're going, if something that any of us says piques your interest, you have a follow-up question, please just pop it into the chat or Telegram it, and either I can see it in the little comments box to my right, or Mattia will let me know that the question has come in through Telegram. So please get involved. Don't wait to the end. Please don't be shy. This is a conversation. I wish we were all in person and we could do it much more with hands going up and the like, but we'll do a COVID job on this and we'll make it work very well. So Anna, Alyssa, thank you so much for joining today. And I just thought what would be a great way of starting is to hear from you a little bit about your career trajectory and how you've got to where you are. And then we can get a little bit into more of what you're doing at the moment. So Anna, would you like to kick us off?
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. Well, although I spent many years working in journalism, I'm actually a physicist by trade, but I have never worked as one. When my son was born, I left my high-flying job at an insurance company. I worked as a head of the international reinsurance department and started working as a freelancer, writing articles to different magazines and newspapers. So I enjoyed it so much, and it was very convenient, if you can imagine, when you have kids. So I decided just to stick to the media for a while. So I moved from one role to another, like correspondent, multimedia producer, social media editor. And I have, truly enjoyed every single job I've done, but I always missed academia and science. So when I was working as a project manager at the BBC, I was, plunged into analytics. And at this point, newsrooms only started talking about data and data science in particular. So I suddenly realized that, well, that's it. That's what I have to do. Because if I want to go back to science, that's, that looked very, very promising. So from this point on, I spent lots of my weekends and free time doing online courses. That was, well, I started from refreshing my math and stats, and then coding. I chose Python. Then evening data science classes, then a fellowship in machine learning, and that was a game changer, I have to say. It's actually amazing how much you can learn online nowadays. And you can find some high quality courses by established universities and get a degree. Some are free, some are not, but it was quite a ride. But this is probably how I ended up here today, I guess.
Love it. I love the fact you've been able to bring together both passions, that you had your scientific passion, got a journalistic passion, and have brought those two things together, an incredibly powerful mixture. Alyssa, how about you? Tell us how you've got to where you are today. What's been your path? Are you a physicist? A secret hidden physicist?
I wish. I think I took a class once. Mine a slightly different story. So I always, like to identify and run towards problems. And when I was sort of just starting off my career, I thought to myself, what's the biggest problem that I'm seeing in media and news media in particular? And for me, it was like a lack of a sort of consumer focus at the core product level. And of course, what product means has evolved over time. But for me, it meant, the newsroom itself. So I was fortunate to be able to sort of join teams, audience engagement teams that were just sort of starting, 10 years ago now, and those are very embedded now. And from there, I started to sort of use data to help make data-informed decisions for the newsroom itself, which led to sort of editorial products, newsletters, videos, etc. And from there, I became a lot more interested in innovation, which is sort of what brought me to R&D. So how can we use data, but also other emerging technology to sort of, again, meet the needs of the newsroom? Back then, it was bringing in the audience. Now it's a whole sort of set of different challenges. If I had to take a step back and think about my career, the advice I always give, or sort of the way I look at it, is also like a Venn diagram of 3 circles. So it's sort of interest, ability, and opportunity. So, looking at the interest is obviously data, and I'm fortunate to be able to use it. And then the opportunity also in newsrooms as these challenges come up. So that's also sort of a bit of the advice that I often give.
Great, thank you so much. You've both obviously honed straight in on kind of such a core issue around journalism today being data. We've been talking about it a lot through the 6 months of the Journalism AI project. Just the need for good data to report, but also the good data to be able to serve your audiences. And I wonder, I mean, as you work with your newsrooms, how have people come to love data, or is there still a bit of an allergy to? I remember when I joined, they said, journalist plus calculator equals mess up. And we were always sort of rather, there was pride almost in not doing numbers. Do you find that has now changed, Alyssa, in the journal? I guess the journal is much more financially literate in terms of numbers than others might be. But how do you find the reaction to your colleagues when you put data in front of them?
For the most part, people are really positive. I mean, you're right. We're really focused on financial journalism and corporate journalism, and we have a really robust training program for the newsroom also, where people can learn how to use basic data or to read a financial report. So I don't want to, people are different. There's always going to be people on both sides of the spectrum. We're a 1,300 person newsroom, but for the most part, I think people, even if they themselves aren't data journalists or know how to work the data, they have a respect for it, which is probably a little different than what we were seeing, even just a few years ago.
Yeah. And how is it at The Guardian? How do you find people are getting on with working with data more?
Yeah, it's actually, I also have to say that our newsroom is already using data quite comfortably. So we built our famous analytics platform OFAN, which is constantly we upgrade it and add more features and more benchmarks all the time. So we have lots of data, and people are using this data, but we are still learning how to get this data into good shape, and how to kind of optimize the way we query, for example, this data, etc. So there are some challenges. But if you ask me in terms of what has changed, look, I like 5-7 years ago, I had to teach journalists how to use Excel. So basically, it was just, and now we have journalists who use Jupyter notebooks for their work, and it's absolutely amazing. I mean, it's fantastic. So the the field has changed dramatically, I would say, in the last 5-7 years. So, but I think that the more data informed our newsrooms become, so the less scary kind of data looks to people. So we just try to be very clear about our mission, because we build models to help journalists do their work better, and so that they have time to be more creative, and for the business as a whole, just make better decisions. And I think that if people who work in the newsroom can see that, they become more comfortable with using our models.
Yeah. And do you find that comfort extends to the idea of using artificial intelligence in reporting, or is that's another step we haven't quite sort of been able to get to yet?
Yeah, I know. We published actually an article. I think that was in September this year. It was written, by a machine, right, by a GPT-3 and OpenAI language generator. And the topic was about AI and how dangerous or useful it can be in the future. And I don't know if you read it, but that was quite, the quality was pretty impressive. It was quite good. Although I have to say that the topic was very, very specific, right? Yeah. So the machine, knew what it was talking about. But there was I remember that there was a comment from the editor who published it saying that editing this piece was no different to editing a human article. If anything, it took less time, right? So that was quite impressive. But I think that I prefer machine learning term to AI, to be honest, because I think that AI is a very broad term. So it first appeared like in the 50s, and it has changed dramatically. But in terms of machine learning and learning, it's kind of the most important part in this term. We use it all the time. I don't think that there is any problem. But if you think about this theme, like robot taking over our jobs, or stuff like this, this theme has been around since the 19th century, and in reality, new technologies create new jobs and new opportunities, if you think about it. But I also think that people who refuse to adapt and embrace it might lose out indeed. So that's that's how I think
one of the challenges, at least I have as like a leader in the newsroom, is remembering, though, not just to work with like the early adopters, but that there is this like larger newsroom. So we have, like our investigative team, or some of our DC or finance editors, have their own Jupyter notebooks and Servo and all these different access, and are coming to us with like amazing ideas for how we can support their journalism. But it's also, how do we, not just build a tool for them or for a particular piece, but then think about how that could be leveraged across the newsroom. So yeah, I think that there's still opportunities there to broaden it out, but it's amazing to see people coming with, here is a use case for ML.
And so just following up on that, Alyssa, how do you sort of communicate the opportunities when you've had a brilliant idea come in, let's say from the investigative team? Are you using that as an example to speak to the rest of the newsroom? How do you sort of bring people along in this journey of bringing more technology into into journalism?
Yeah, I think that is something that we're continuing to work on. But yeah, I think we published a few pieces recently around like Google search algorithms and sort of other sophisticated data analysis around redlining. And yeah, we definitely use that as like, here's a story that came out of this technique, but also now this technique is available to you. So reach out, and we have Slack chats and email distribution lists and things like that. So we try to like pin it to, here's like a piece of anecdotal information, here's the story, here's how the story did, but also here are sort of some other ideas. And it goes both ways. So often, we have journalists and reporters on the team, and they'll go to a reporter or an editor and say, like, I have an idea for a story. Do you want to partner? And we also have people from other bureaus coming to us and saying, like, I think there's something here, but I have no idea how to do it. Please help.
Yeah. So how many people are on your team, Alyssa?
It hovers between sort of 12 to 17, depending. We have sometimes we have fellows come in and sort of some contractors occasionally for specific projects. So it's predominantly an engineering team, really focused on sort of the wider newsroom tools. But then we also have some sort of strategy people and program managers and journalists.
Excellent. Anna, how about you? How have you sort of structured the team at The Guardian?
Yeah, we have actually a data scientist only team. So this is quite a challenge, because we have to constantly work very closely with engineering and product, and also kind of trying to understand how the business works, and where there are any pain points that we can help the business. But the implementation part is actually very, very hard. So this is something that we are still trying to figure out how to, build this bridge between your shiny model, which can sit just in a Jupyter notebook, to something that really works and really produces, some tangible benefits to the business. This part is very hard because, you can spend, a lot of time just trying to figure out what model you want to use, what kind of fancy algorithm you might use. But when it really comes to production and some real world, that's a big challenge. But I think it's for everyone. It's like this probably.
Yeah. And so how do you think it could work better in the future?
Well, I think that we can try different structures in terms of how we structure our teams. I think that we decided to just to work very closely with different teams on specific projects. We'll see how it goes. I mean, I don't have an answer actually. It's just like we have to test and try different ways. But I think that we'll get there.
we have also a question from. So go ahead, Anna.
Yeah. I just wanted to also say something about how important it is to actually to talk to people in the newsroom and to communicate, what you are doing and how you are doing, because I think that we have to be very clear that the majority of our models are probabilistic models. And this concept is sometimes it's quite hard to actually explain to non-technical people. So we usually ask, how confident would you like to be, right? So is this probability is enough? Is it good enough for for your use case? And then we have to explain that we will never be able to be 100% right and correct all the time. So you have to be very careful how you explain this. And if we have time, actually, I wanted to tell one story, which I think that it was quite revealing, because at the BBC I was working on this 50/50 project. So we put a lot of effort initially to manually record every single source, voice that we had on radio, TV, online, etc. So at the same time, I was working on automating this process, and I think that for a couple of months, I was running my model at the same time as people were counting all this stuff manually in an Excel file, the one that I had to explain how it works. And it was cool, because in the end I had this manually labeled data set, which any data scientists know that this is gold, right? So this is what you really want. And when I evaluated my model against this data set, I started, noticing some weird things, right? So I looked a little bit closer. And I started noticing some mistakes that were done, by humans, right? So I went back and, I just looked through 1 month of data of every single article for one section. I don't pretend that I looked at like thousands and thousands, but that was quite a significant number of articles. And I was totally surprised that the accuracy of human kind of curation was no better and sometimes worse than the model. But yeah, that was quite revealing. But I remember that it really helped me at this point to talk, to editors and to journalists and to explain what's going on. So they kind of they understood what probability means, because and they really kind of they were more kind of accepting and more open to to this automation. So I thought that was actually a great example. But yeah,
that's really interesting. I think we're naturally nervous, aren't we, of a machine only being or a vaccine only being X% correct and trustworthy. And actually, if one actually measured one's own decisions every day, our level of accuracy would probably be considerably lower. Whether it's how much light should I put into this or whatever it is. I mean, we're terribly inaccurate, and we give ourselves a lot more grace than we give the machines, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, from my experience, what works better is when we combine our efforts and work together with content, makers. And so when possible, we always look for opportunities to build something which makes editors' lives easier, but kind of it doesn't remove their wisdom from the equation, and they feel in control. So, for example, a system which suggests editors a list of possible articles to cross-promotion works much better than a fully automated recommendation engine, or an image recommender which offers editors to choose from a list of relevant visual options, things like this. So I think that from my mantra is, machine learning plus curation is my favorite combination. Oh, it even rhymes nicely.
Yeah. Alyssa, you said that you started your career just looking for problems that you could go and solve. So what are some of the problems that you're looking now to solve in the newsroom?
Yeah, a bit similar to Anna, where we sort of put a lot into the notion of assisted production. So how can we assist our reporters and editors in writing the story and producing it in the CMS and making those distribution decisions. So right now we're looking into what we can actually build into the CMS. So we similarly have like a sort of a gender tracking tool. It's not perfect, but we're looking at how can we integrate that into the CMS so we actually have that data live when a reporter is typing out a story. To say, hey, maybe you could consider using a different source. And, ideally, we'd also link it into a network graph to say, and here's this a few sources that you might want to specifically reference or call. So really a lot of those types of things. How do we, I similarly have a refrain that I constantly go to, which is let's help the computer do the what so you can do the why. So if we can take that what and use, the structured data to, create a draft of an article or a prompt or an alert, then the reporters can excel what they're really good at, which is the context, the analysis, the linkages. So we're really focusing on that part for now.
There's a nice question in the chat from Mukul saying, do you think that the separation of disciplines, so product, editorial design and engineering, helps or hinders in our overall desire to get more technology helping journalism?
It's fun. So my team doesn't have that distinction, which is probably quite unique. So I have a dual role where R&D chief is a newsroom role, but senior product manager is part of the product and technology suite. And because we're so focused on the newsroom, although we're, strictly speaking, in part of the product org, or most of the engineers fall in the product org, we really, think of ourselves as newsroom members. And I think the newsroom does as well. So for us, that distinction is a bit of like a false one. I don't want to speak for other teams, but we actually, in January, the Wall Street Journal created a content experiences team, which focuses on, here's how the story page renders, and here's, newsroom tools as part of that. So that really, we've sort of put the journalism product parts much closer to the newsroom, and left like sort of still some of the advertising or the basic platforms, et cetera, still more on the product org. So we're definitely starting to see that shift.
Yeah. So I'll come back to you about your team in a second, but Anna, tell me about how things are with you. Do you also have, it sounds to me from what you were saying earlier that you've got somewhat less of a blended team.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, I think that different companies, decide to approach this in different way, which is absolutely fine. I think that the main point is, we can make something work only if we work together. So that's the main point, because you cannot achieve kind of and build the final product without involving UX design, UX and engineering from different actually from different perspectives. So it only works if we work together. How you structure it inside the company, well, it's honestly it's probably a personal choice, but yeah, it might be very different, but we still have to work together. Yeah,
I think we also have to remember that like the media, like one of the only constant is change, right? So just because something's structured this way now, it may not be the right structure, 6 months or a year from now. So like I find people get frustrated and like, well, we tried that setup 5 years ago and it didn't work, so why would we go back to it? And well, because the world's a completely different place, and we have different team members here who can respond differently, and we have Slack now we didn't used to. So, I think we have to also remember to try different things and be willing to adapt.
Yeah, it's actually, we are very different from tech companies, because we are not tech companies. So that's actually a very, very good point to make, because and sometimes we brought like data science, machine learning on top of historically existed structure. So that's why sometimes it's quite natural for us to build some of our teams in a different way, because I can imagine that if it was Google, it would be structured so differently from us.
Yeah. And I mean, with the work that you are doing, there's also a lot of technology development happening on a sort of monthly basis. So I guess one of the questions around structure is, when you do have people in a sort of a product or a technology function, there's a lot of learning that's happening and trying to keep up with things. How do you keep that going if you have more of a blended team? Alyssa, maybe to you first.
Yeah. Well, I have an incredible engineering manager on the Newsroom Tools team, who I'm very fortunate to work with, who's also helps create time and space for the engineers to work on different projects. We have, I would say, also like different types of projects. I forget what the 2x2 is of impact and effort, but we make sure that we have smaller projects in those sort of low effort category that people can work on as well, so that they're learning different skill sets, they're able to take ownership of a smaller project while also contributing to a larger one, things of that nature.
Yeah. Anna, anything that you're doing particularly with your engineers?
Yeah, we work together on some projects, obviously, but we also try to highlight what we are doing to the whole company, because we want to be the whole business aware to for what we are doing. So we have some quarterly showcases, for example, right? And when we show people what we've been working on. So yeah, that's how we do that.
We've got so many questions coming into the comment section. I'm just going to quickly turn my attention across here. So we've got a question, Anna, for you from Nick Newman, asking, can you tell us what machine learning is currently live and what you think offers the biggest possibility? For example, personalizing content, better messaging, production efficiency, targeting new users, etc.
Well, we do lots of different things, and maybe everything that Nick mentioned. So we obviously
All of the above.
We have because we worked on propensity and lookalike models, because we have we have different revenue streams, and we have subscription, we have different products, and we also have donation donations that we have to look at. So we have all these models trying to understand how we can onboard our customers better, and how we can maintain this relationship with them. But apart from this, I can mention, because I really like this project. So one of the projects that we are working on is extracting structured data from unstructured text. And for example, if you have a freestyle food article and you want to extract, from this story a recipe with a precise list of ingredients, like cooking steps and timing and servings, etc., and plus, to look for a relevant picture. So by building a model like this, and this is what we are doing. Well, we built already several models, but by doing this, we will be able to create a nicely searchable database, of all our famous recipes, and make this content available across different products in a very kind of efficient way. But also when we were working, and this is what happens quite often. So we were working on this specific project about recipes, but actually when we were working on this, we suddenly realized that, well, actually the same approach might work for different applications and for different use cases. So we are thinking now about extending what we learned in this project to other projects. But in terms of other opportunities in the newsroom, well, there are so many. I mean, the list is very long. We are talking about automating tagging, for example, labeling, right? And also some kind of personalization. But again, I think that, my personal view on personalization, that it works much better if you have a human in the loop. So that's that's my position on this one.
Excellent. I'm going to just run through some more questions, because otherwise we'll run out of time if I keep going with mine. So I'm going to give this one to Alyssa. Question from Dima Shishkin. Do you see your organization, so we'll do it for the journal, actively offering your machine learning solutions as SaaS, so software as a service, benefiting those media who can't afford all that work? You've got a decent amount of money. For some smaller corporations, maybe they don't. Would you think about helping people out with more plug and play sort of things from what you've learned to other organizations?
I think we're inching towards it. So the Talk 2020 tool, for instance, was actually a internal tool that R&D built with our DC bureau, and it was successful, and the audience, customer research team indicated that our users would like it as well. So we did, in fact.
To those who don't know it, what it was doing?
Of course. So if you go to wsa.com/talk2020, you'll find a tool that helps you go through lots of, in this case, just presidential public comments. So this was leading into the elections. We created a tool, again, internally with all of the Democratic candidates, for a president, so that our reporters could very quickly find different comments that they had made over their lifespan in public office. So that was a tool to do sort of rhetorical analysis, looking at past comments, et cetera, sort of to find that context quicker. And that used quite a bit of machine learning for both topic analysis, but also where something was said, whether it was a broadcast or a speech or what have you. And that tool, leading into the elections, we turned into a public-facing tool for our readers. And I think that type of thing is possible where, obviously, if it's open to our readers, any other org and reporters from other orgs could use it as well in their own reporting. I think whether we'd actually sell it, I think we have to still sort of struggle with internally, but we're definitely moving much more towards sort of that type of model. So we're currently in the process of insourcing some of our tools, particularly our design system. Obviously, Dow Jones is part of News Corp. So for us, one of the first things we do is we expand it from the Wall Street Journal to Dow Jones, which includes MarketWatch and Barron's Group, and then we expand it to News Corp, and then we look at expanding it outwards. So for a number of our tools and models, we're moving in that direction, but we're still probably a ways away if we even get there.
And how do those other the Barrons and the like take to some of these tools? Is it an immediate pickup, or do you have to do quite some explaining as to how they
really
work?
Yeah, it's really different depending on the newsroom. And I'd say the newsrooms and some of them take to things much faster than ours, and in some instances much slower. And I think it really depends on the philosophy, if you will, of the editorial approach. So for instance, MarketWatch is much more of a real-time news service on the market. So you can currently find automated content on their site just for market open and close updates. For us, philosophically speaking, we don't want to publish directly to site at this time. We're really building those drafts for the reporters to add the analysis to, because the journal is really much more about the analysis and the perspective. So really depending on the tool, it can really depend on the newsroom. We built an alerting system a while ago around market moves using different thresholds and applying a machine layer on top of that for editorial decision making. So we had the reporters and editors saying, yeah, this is a good insight, or no, it isn't, so that we could learn over time and reduce the number of alerts coming in. And we ended up having to build it in a way that we could have 4 different models running because what the different newsrooms wanted was really different. So the Wall Street Journal, wanted more alerts on sort of more consumer companies and larger market cap companies, versus Newswires, which is our sort of real-time news service, more for B2B clients, really just wanted all the things. So a lot more companies, a lot more alerts. And again, for the platforms team, they really only want the highest threshold, most important things. So we had to build many different models for sort of, again, the editorial instincts of each team.
And we've got a few questions along these lines. I'm just going to merge them all and maybe throw them to you, Anna. I'm just asking, so, we've talked about, using, let's say, machine learning plus curation, and does that work with people, or are there still some people who are worried? And what are they worried about in terms of bringing in AI technology to either automate or augment some of their writing tasks?
Yeah, I think that what we are trying to do is to empower these people also at the same time. So it's not only curation, but actually when people notice something which doesn't work. So for example, in the model output, if they can see that a name was misclassified by gender, for example, etc., so they can highlight this and incorporate this in the feedback loop, basically. And so our model can be retrained on on this, constantly retrain on these examples. And I think that when you give people in the newsroom kind of this control and this power, that works even better. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's probably the best way.
it does feel it's like a softly approach of just helping people see how it can help, giving them a couple of examples, and then moving it on from there. Sort of introducing it as this is here for you rather than
Yeah,
use
absolutely.
it.
Yeah.
Mattia, are there questions coming in from Telegram as well? Because I know I've got a lot on YouTube, but if there are some questions coming in from Telegram as well, I'd love to get those involved.
Thank you, Jane. Yes, there are a couple of questions on Telegram too, especially one that I think might be interesting to hear Anna and Alyssa ideas on it about new skills. Like if you were to hire people for your teams, like what kind of skills would you be most specifically looking at this stage, considering again this intersection between AI and journalism?
Versatility. I think like the hard skills are, of course, obvious. You need to have, Python or something like that if you want to be a data scientist. I trust the engineers on my team to sort of surface the skill set level. I then come in and look to hire for much more the emotional intelligence. So yeah, how resilient are you? How can you explain what you've done to someone who doesn't know what necessarily they're looking at or can't read through the code? Those types of things. How are you communicating your ideas is definitely one of the most important things that I look for on top of sort of the harder skills.
So every young journalist listening in the background, take notes if you want to work with Alyssa. Now you know what you need to get.
Yeah, always send a thank you email.
Yes.
Fantastic.
I have to say that, yeah, finding and hiring people with the right skills is very hard. I'm not pretending that it's easy. So I was lucky to be able to build a new team at The Guardian, and it wasn't easy. It took some time, but we have a brilliant team in place now. People who are naturally kind of curious and dedicated. But the recruitment process was not easy. I was really when I was hiring, I was really interested in people who'd had some exposure to our domain or who would be able to learn fast, because it's impossible to overestimate how important domain knowledge is in our work. So you can avoid so many mistakes and save so much time if you understand how the business works. But also, people, which, Alyssa mentioned, who are able to spot opportunities for machine learning solutions and actually translate a business problem into a clear data science task. And people who understand how different algorithms kind of work under the hood, and are not only understanding, but actually are able to explain in simple terms how it works. So this is absolutely crucial because we work with so many people who are non-technical people. So it's super important. And also, I don't know, skills which allow you to deliver, to make things done, to build a bridge, that I was mentioning between, your model and actually, something in production. That's also very, very important.
I would add like an understanding of scale. So we've had sort of people come into the team and sort of build something out and then, be frustrated that like 1,300 people in the newsroom aren't using it, or they're used to thinking about like ML in the context of like Apple or Google. Like if 15 people are using a particular tool, that could be a huge win, So I think also an understanding of the scale of the impact and what they can do. And if it's the right story, it has a massive impact, even if it's just one thing. And you need to learn that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that in terms of, company overall, we actually have done a lot of progress in this field, but we need to do more to make people outside our data departments and outside our data bubble to be more data savvy, because we have to constantly generate new ideas about how to make our business agile, optimized, and more efficient. But we also need our stakeholders to understand advantages and limitations of AI and machine learning, and this is very important. So if we are all kind of on the same page, it is so much easier to deliver the right solutions. So that's very important.
This has now moved beyond hiring, but to add to that point, we do like a quarterly, identifying business opportunities with ML sort of course, like a 2-hour. It used to be longer, but now it's only 2 hours or 1 hour because of Zoom. But where we teach people across different levels, everyone from the different elements of the business come and learn very basics. What's the difference between supervised and unsupervised? What type of problems might there be that we can solve? Here are a few examples that we use at the Journal or at Dow Jones, and bringing people in to sort of evangelize what machine learning can do and get people thinking about how they can use machine learning has been really fruitful.
Jane, I know you're the moderator today, but if you may, I'm curious about your take on this all as well, on the skills question.
On the skills question, I couldn't agree with Alyssa more in terms of flexibility. I think that one of the big issues when you're trying to pull together different disciplines from different silos of your company is really to keep a very open mind, always to be looking for opportunity. Really having the what can we do rather than we can't do, or this is why we can't. There are so many issues that come up. I don't know, people either think that a machine is going to be magic and it's going to solve all of their problems, which is unrealistic, and you're going to need the dev time and you're going to need different skills to come in to solve it. And then people often can lose interest and just fall off. So they think they're an early adopter, but because they don't find an immediate answer, they sort of drift off into the sidelines. So I think that sort of that flexibility, co-solving problems, really discussing together. So how can we work together to make this happen is so important. And I'm really encouraged just to see more and more people in our product world really seeking to understand the journalism and the user, and seeing their job not just as sort of as middleware between the two, but really seeking to take the journalism and make sure it has impact, and it has impact journalistically, that it has impact financially, that it has impact. There was a question from Thomas, I think it was, saying, how can these ML initiatives impact your bottom line? And I think we're still in such early days, but you're absolutely right, Thomas. We have to be sort of going towards, your sort of, it's probably a double bottom line. It's probably a financial bottom line and a journalistic bottom line. But I think that, that sort of agility of mind, openness, curiosity, joint solving of problems, learning from each other, having that mutual respect, that the engineer in the corner that you didn't know and you don't really understand what they do, actually could be the answer to getting your story to have impact on an audience. I think that's incredibly powerful. So the more people we can get who are sort of fungible and who can move between and to translate between different teams, by far the better.
I think I'm going to make sure that we cut this part of the video and we send it to journalism schools across the world. That's all they need to know.
Just be everything to everyone.
Well, I think, but I also think that's part of the danger of these times, is that if you're everything to everyone, you can, and that, which is why I was really interested, Alyssa, in what you were saying about how you keep the engineers going on the sort of sharp edge of engineering, because you can end up spreading yourself so thin that you become a jack of all trades and a master of none. And in ML, more than anything else, you really need to be a master of the coding, a master of the data, a master of the outputs, a master of the different impacts that you can be having.
Yeah.
There's a question here which I think we were just kind of touching on, which I might have missed. So is there another question from Telegram while I find it, Mattia?
There is actually, yes. So just to say about the question before, I forgot to mention, was Vinit asking, and he was thanking for the answer, and also saying, Alyssa, he's going to enroll for a Python online certification immediately. So this is impact of this chat. Very good.
Impact.
And also on Telegram, another question from Dan, which I think could be for the three of you, actually, about if your organizations only use products that you build in-house, or if you also collaborate with external partners on the creation and implementation of these tools?
We do both. So especially, I think when we're looking at like proof of concepts, which is, obviously integral to sort of the R&D mentality, we're often looking to partner with third-party vendors to help us figure out, like, is this something that we really believe in? Are we going to see that impact, however we choose to define it for that project? And things like that. And then, it's not always the case that we would stop using that vendor either. As Jane said, ML is so specific and it requires such you need to be very well versed in that. So I don't know why, it's possible, but it would depend on the project for, if we're paying a vendor or working with a vendor who is that specialist and has worked on something for 4 years and created the best version of it. We are not, we don't think that we could replace it with one person in 6 months. There's a lot that we can do, but I don't think that's it. So we definitely do both.
Yeah, I think that the same here. Actually, we do both. It really depends on what's out there. So you always have to kind of figure out what would work better, and how much resources you actually need to put into building something in house. So I mentioned that OFund was built in house, and it's absolutely fantastic because this is a platform where we really kind of control everything, and we can add more features and whatever we want to build on top of this. So this is fantastic, but you can imagine that for small newsrooms, for example, it probably wouldn't be possible because it's just too much of an investment. But if we are talking about like machine learning and data science thing, it's we just quite often we have to go and use pre-trained existing models because we just don't have enough data to train these models. So what we usually do with some NLP models, for example, or computer vision models, we can retrain these models on our own data sets because what we also kind of can see again and again that some of these models were trained on American corpora, for example, American documents, and it doesn't work for for the UK data sets. And it's quite funny to see where the model kind of gets something wrong. So for example, English football clubs are always classified as person. Just like, come on, you should know what Arsenal means, or Manchester United. This is not a person. This is a football club. So I mean, it's actually quite interesting to see because we haven't actually talked about this, but different biases, right, in different models, and what we have to, and it's not only about gender biases, it's actually just biases in your training data sets quite often. So even when we use external models, we have to be very careful and spot these biases and try to remove them.
Yeah. A topic dear to my heart, Anna, having just come off Journalism AI on Team 1, doing Project AIJO on exactly that.
Yeah, it's biases. It's actually it's a fascinating topic, and I know that you had a session actually based on this topic, right? Which is fantastic. But because I worked on diversity projects at both the BBC and the Guardian, it was quite revealing to observe how historical and cultural biases can intervene with your modeling. So, for example, a very simple task, just extracting names from articles. So the models quite often classifies street names and company names as person. But because we have, then when we kind of, when you genderize this output, you can see that, well, mostly the misclassification is mostly about females because we have more streets named after men, we have more companies named after men, and things like this. And that's that's life, right? So this is the world that we are living in. But it's very interesting to spot what's going on in these models.
I think we have to be careful. Like we talk a lot about like human in the loop or something like that, or a human as a check after the machine learning is done, and you forget that like the human is the one that gathered the data also, and that we really need to bring in humans throughout to try to prevent as much bias as we can, and to bring in different types of humans and things of that nature. Because there's even, I would also tell like journalism students, like, question journalism pedagogy. What are you being taught about journalism that is based on some of those historical pieces of information? Even the common refrain, if it bleeds, it leads. What is that based on?
Yeah, but we also we pretty much limited, and this is something that bothers me actually a lot. We are pretty much limited with gender classification to binary classification, and when we are looking at names, for example, or images, and this doesn't represent the reality. So the world is different, around us. So we still kind of we still fail to capture these nuances in diversity. And we are still trying to figure out, how we can patch these gaps in our insights, so we have the whole picture. And sometimes, we try to create, better metadata, using some manual intervention, things like this. But we are still struggling to actually to do it properly, and that's a huge problem.
I think we probably hit on another hour's session, Mattia, but we don't have another hour, sadly. We have another couple of minutes. So if I can just draw us to a close, maybe by asking a question that is reflected in a couple of the questions on YouTube. But if you were starting out now, beyond learning Python, which we've already covered, what advice would you give to your, if you were starting out now, what advice would you give to yourself, or what advice would you give to some of the students who are starting out now, beyond what we've touched on in terms of questioning pedagogy and learning Python?
Don't tell my. Oh, sorry.
Alyssa, go first. No, go first.
I was going to say, don't tell my boss that this is the advice I'm giving, but a piece of advice that was given to me early on in my career was sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. And I still live by that sometimes.
Live by that every single day. Anna, how about you?
Well, I'm not sure about students, but in my particular case, I have to probably the advice that I can give people is just it's never too late to change your career. Yeah. that's my point. And if you have a dream, just follow it. I won't pretend it was easy. It was tough, but so resilience, it's what you need the most. But also support, because I was very lucky. I had some people around me who really supported and believed in me. But just follow the dream. If you want to become a data scientist, so just if I could do that, you can do that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, ladies, for just a super inspiring hour. I've really enjoyed it, and I think that's a lovely moment to end, Anna, on that call to our own personal flexibility with our own career. The world is changing so fast.
Yeah.
There are things now that we talk about every day that weren't even in the conversation, certainly when I started journalism, even probably when somebody 5 years ago started journalism. So maintaining that personal flexibility and bringing that flex into our organizations, I think, is a wonderful call to arms for all of us. So thank you so much. Mattia, do you want to close us out?
You did it perfectly. I don't need to. I literally just need to say my extra thank you to the three of you. This was a fantastic conversation, really, and I'm looking forward to share it widely so people can follow. It will be on our YouTube like forever, as long as YouTube exists. So hopefully many generations of new students will follow your advice. Jokes aside.
And in this time, they'll say they were wrong. It went this way instead.
Okay, so we will take it off YouTube before that moment happens.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it. It was a fantastic session, and this was a great conversation. For everybody following us, thank you again for the many questions. I'm sorry if we didn't get to reply all of them, but it was really amazing. We have another session in 1 hour, so stay connected, and I'll see you back later. Thank you so much. Thank you again to the three of you.
Thank you.